I couldn't breathe. My fingers hovered above the scratches on the lock, thin, jagged lines that dug into the metal like claw marks from the inside. You ever feel watched when you know you're alone? That's what it felt like right then, except I wasn't alone. I turned, and there he was, standing in my kitchen, just beyond the doorway. Me. He tilted his head, wearing my face like it was too tight. Same hair, same clothes. But the smile was wrong. Wide. Stretched too far, like skin over broken glass. "Hey, Mark," he said, my voice but hollow, like it had been scooped out and filled with static. I froze. I wanted to run, to scream, but my feet stuck to the floor. "You're not real," I whispered. My voice cracked. His smile twitched. "You sure about that?" Then he moved. Not walked, moved. A sudden flicker, like a skipped frame in a video. He was closer now. Too close. I stumbled back, but he followed, his steps light and soundless, like he wasn't touching the ground. I reached for the nearest object, a lamp, and swung. Glass shattered. The impact should have stopped him. It didn't. He kept coming. "You can't stop this," he whispered, and my eyes lit up with something cold and alien. The last thing I saw before the world went dark was his hand closing around my throat. One text message from my best friend changed everything. "Why are you acting so weird?" I stared at the screen. The words swirled like oil on water, refusing to settle. Weird. I hadn't even talked to him today. My thumbs hovered above the keyboard. But I didn't know what to say. "What do you mean?" I typed back. No response. That's when the first prick of unease burrowed under my skin. I glanced around the room, half expecting someone to step out from behind the couch and yell, "Gotcha." But no one was there. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the faint drip of the faucet. You ever get that feeling? That slow creeping realization that something isn't quite right, but you can't figure out what. That's how it started. A pit in my stomach, a static buzz in my ears. I shrugged it off. Stress, probably. Work had been brutal lately, and I hadn't been sleeping much. I set the phone down and walked to the bathroom. I just needed to splash some water on my face, clear my head. But when I looked in the mirror, I froze. You ever have one of those moments where your own reflection gives you chills, like it's you, but not? That's what I saw. My face was there, same dark hair, same crooked smile, but the eyes, they weren't mine. I can't explain it. They looked off, like the light didn't hit them right. Or maybe it was the way they didn't blink, even when I did. I leaned in closer. The mirror fogged from my breath, but the reflection didn't move, not right away. It was just half a second, barely enough to notice, but it was enough. Enough to send my pulse hammering in my chest. Enough to make me step back, nearly tripping over the bath mat. I looked again, and this time everything seemed normal. My reflection blinked when I blinked, tilted its head when I did, but my stomach was still twisted in knots. I told myself I was imagining things, that I was just tired. I even laughed a little forced and hollow and tried to brush it off, but I kept staring, because no matter how hard I tried to ignore it, I didn't feel alone in that bathroom. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I lay in bed with the covers pulled up to my chin, every creak of the house setting my teeth on edge. My phone buzzed again around 2 a.m. I grabbed it so fast I almost dropped it. Another text. "You're not answering. Is this a joke?" My stomach turned. A joke? What was he talking about? I didn't do anything. 3 dots popped up on the screen. Typing. Then they disappeared. Then came the message that sent ice down my spine. "Dude, we just talked like an hour ago. Don't mess with me." I shot up in bed. My breath felt too loud, echoing off the walls. I hadn't left my room all night. I knew that. But his words hung in my head like smoke, thick and suffocating. I didn't text him back. Instead, I dialed his number. It rang once, twice. "Hello?" His voice cracked on the other end, low and cautious. "Eli, it's me." There was a pause, and then, "What do you mean it's you? We just talked. What's going on?" My mouth felt dry. "I swear we didn't. I've been home all night." His breathing hitched. No, you weren't. I saw you. You were acting all wrong, smiling weird, saying creepy stuff." "Eli, stop." But he cut me off. "Don't call me again until you figure this out." The line went dead. I didn't move for a long time after that. Just sat there in the dark, gripping my phone like it might ground me to reality. Eventually, I forced myself up and walked to the living room. The apartment felt different, like someone had rearranged the furniture, but put it all back in the wrong spots. Familiar, but off. And then I saw it, the keys. They were sitting on the kitchen counter. The ones I know I left by the door. And the worst part, the front door was locked. From the inside. You ever feel like someone's been in your space? Like the air is heavier, somehow stale and invaded? That's how it felt standing in my own living room. I wanted to call Eli again, beg him to come over, but my fingers wouldn't work. My chest felt tight, and my skin crawled like it didn't fit right. Because deep down I already knew someone had been here, and they might still be. I didn't leave the apartment the next day. I couldn't, not after what happened with Eli. The scratches on the lock kept pulling me back over and over like I expected them to change shape if I stared long enough. But they didn't. They just sat there, sharp and accusing. Proof. You ever try to convince yourself you're imagining things? It's harder than it sounds. My brain kept spinning, trying to explain it all away. Stress, sleep deprivation, hell, maybe even a prank. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me. It started with the TV. I wasn't even watching it, just had it on for noise to break the silence. Some old sitcom was playing. Laugh track, bad jokes, the kind of thing you don't need to pay attention to. But then the sound cut out, just for a second. The screen flickered, and suddenly I was staring at myself. I dropped the mug I'd been holding. It shattered, but I barely noticed. Because there I was on the screen, sitting exactly where I was sitting, wearing exactly what I was wearing. But the other me didn't move. He just stared at the camera, at me, and then he smiled. Not a friendly smile, not even a fake one. It was hungry. I lunged for the remote, fumbling until the screen went black. My hands were shaking so bad I dropped it. You ever hear silence that feels alive? That's what filled the apartment after the TV shut off. Like something was breathing just out of sight. I tried to leave after that. I didn't care how paranoid it made me look. I just knew I couldn't be there anymore. But when I grabbed my keys and opened the door, I stopped cold. There was mail on the floor. A stack of letters and flyers. That wasn't the weird part. The weird part was the footprint. It was wet, mud, and it was facing the wrong way, pointing into the apartment. I slammed the door shut and locked it, twice. My phone buzzed, and I nearly dropped it. It was Eli. "You need to leave. Now." I called him back immediately. He answered on the first ring. "Eli," my voice cracked. "What's going on? You have to tell me." "You don't get it, man," he said, whispering like someone might hear. "That thing, I don't know what it is, but it's not you." I pressed the phone tighter against my ear. "What do you mean? Did you see it?" He didn't answer right away. I heard footsteps, maybe, but then his voice dropped lower. "It came to my apartment last night," he said. "It knocked, smiled through the peephole. But it wasn't smiling, right? I didn't let it in, Mark. I swear to God I didn't." I swallowed hard. "You're not making sense." "No," he hissed. "You're not making sense." Then the line went dead. The lights flickered. Just once, but long enough to throw shadows dancing across the walls. I tried to breathe, but it felt like the air had thickened, like the room was closing in. I ran to the mirror. I don't even know why. Maybe I thought if I faced him, I could prove it wasn't real. But when I looked, the reflection was waiting. And this time he moved first. I didn't scream. I should have. Instead, I just stood there, staring at the mirror as my reflection smiled, and then turned to walk away. Not out of the mirror, deeper into it. And that's when I realized it wasn't just copying me anymore. It was leaving. I didn't touch the mirror. Not at first. I stood there, breathing too fast, my pulse pounding in my ears. My reflection was gone. Just gone. No shimmer, no ripple. Just an empty glass surface staring back at me. You ever feel like something's watching you, even when you can't see it? That's how it felt. Like it hadn't disappeared at all, just stepped somewhere I couldn't follow. I reached out, fingertips trembling, and pressed against the glass. It was cold, solid, but the longer I touched it, the more it felt wrong, almost like skin. I pulled my hand back and wiped it on my pants, suddenly desperate to feel clean. I didn't know what to do, so I did what anyone would have tried to act normal. I left the bathroom, grabbed my phone, and sat on the couch with the TV off this time. Just me and the hum of the refrigerator, pretending everything was fine. But it wasn't. I kept glancing toward the hallway, waiting, listening. It felt like the whole apartment was holding its breath. When the knock came, I nearly jumped out of my skin. 3 sharp raps against the door. Not frantic, not loud. Measured. I froze. It was after midnight. No one knocked that late unless it was him. My phone buzzed and I flinched. "Eli, a text. Don't open it." I stared at the door. Another knock. Louder this time. I swallowed, my throat dry, and texted back. "How do you know?" No answer. The knocking stopped. I exhaled shakily and crept toward the peephole. My heart hammered so hard I thought it might give me away. I didn't want to look, but I had to. It was me, standing there in the hallway, wearing my jacket, the one I hadn't worn in days. He looked right at the peephole, like he knew I was there. And then he smiled. Not wide like before, small, patient. I staggered back, my head spinning. My phone buzzed again. "I told you not to open it." I almost screamed. Not to open it? Eli knew what was out there. He had to. But he wouldn't answer his phone, wouldn't explain. He just left me alone with it. Another knock. I couldn't take it anymore. I ran to the kitchen, grabbed a knife, and braced myself. The knocks came again, harder, faster, and I did the only thing I could think of. I yanked the door open. Nothing. The hallway was empty. I stood there, clutching the knife, waiting for something to lunge out of the shadows, but there was nothing. Just the hum of the overhead lights and the distant sound of traffic. I should have felt relieved, but I didn't, because when I looked down there was mud on the threshold, wet footprints, leading inside. My stomach dropped. I slammed the door and turned to face the apartment and froze. The knife slipped from my hand and clattered to the floor. The TV was on, and there I was again, sitting on the couch, smiling. Only this time the reflection turned to look at me. I don't remember moving. 1 second I was in the living room. The next I was back in the bathroom, staring at the mirror, half expecting it to break apart and let him through. It didn't, but my reflection was back, watching me. And then it spoke. "You should let me in." Its lips didn't move, but I heard the words, clear as day, in my head. I stumbled back, hitting the sink. My breath came in short gasps. "I know you can hear me," it said. "I've been waiting." I shook my head. "You're not real." The smile twitched. "Neither are you." And before I could react, it pressed its hand against the glass. So did I not on purpose? Not even consciously. My arm just moved like it wasn't mine anymore. My palm met the mirror, and the surface rippled. Not like water, like fabric stretching, pulling tighter. I couldn't let go. My reflection leaned closer, pressing harder, and the glass grew warm under my skin. "You let me in," it whispered. "Now I'll let you out." And then, crack, the mirror splintered, webbing out from where our hands met. I fell back as the glass shattered, raining down in jagged pieces. But the reflection didn't fall with it. It stepped forward, out of the frame, and it was still smiling. I ran. I didn't think I just moved. My legs carried me out of the bathroom, down the hall, and into the living room before my brain could catch up. My breath came in sharp, panicked gasps, and my bare feet slipped on the floor, but I didn't stop, because it was following me. I heard it. Soft footsteps, deliberate and unhurried, like it knew I had nowhere to go. I grabbed my keys off the counter and bolted for the door, but the deadbolt stuck. My hands fumbled, slick with sweat, as I twisted and yanked, but it wouldn't budge. The lights flickered. I turned, and it was there, standing at the end of the hall, just outside the bathroom. Shards of glass crunched under its feet as it stepped forward. My feet, my face, my body. But the eyes, God, the eyes, empty, like someone had hollowed them out and left the shells behind. "Mark," it said, my name, my voice. But the way it said it, slow, almost curious, made my skin crawl. I wanted to scream, wanted to fight, but my legs wouldn't move. My hands wouldn't unclench from the keys. "You don't have to run," it said. I swallowed hard. "Stay back." It didn't. It took another step, and the light flickered again. Its shadow stretched across the floor, twisting unnaturally, too long, too sharp, like it didn't belong to the thing wearing my skin. I raised the keys like a weapon. Not that it would matter. I didn't even know if I could hurt it. "You're not real," I said, my voice breaking. Its smile widened. "I'm more real than you." And then it moved. It didn't walk, it flickered. One moment it was across the room, and the next it was right in front of me. Close enough to see the veins under its skin. Close enough to smell the faint scent of earth mud. I swung. The keys scraped against its cheek, leaving a red line that didn't bleed. It blinked, almost confused, and then reached out. I barely dodged. My shoulder hit the doorframe, hard enough to make me see stars, but I kept moving. The window. I stumbled toward it, throwing the curtains aside. I didn't even think about the drop. I just shoved the glass open and started climbing. "Don't." The voice was right behind me, too close. I turned just in time to see it grab my leg. I kicked hard and felt it let go. And then I was falling out into the night, into the cold, into the wet grass that broke my landing but knocked the breath from my lungs. I rolled over, gasping, and looked up at the window. It was there, looking down at me. It didn't try to follow. It didn't even move. It just stood there, watching. I forced myself to my feet and ran. I don't know how far I went. The streets blurred together, and the streetlights burned too bright, like they were trying to push back the shadows creeping closer. My phone was dead. My keys were gone. I didn't care. I just kept moving. When I finally stopped, I was outside Eli's apartment. I pounded on the door, not caring who I woke up. "Eli, it's me." No answer. "Please." I hit the door again, and this time it swung inward. Unlocked, the apartment was dark. Quiet. Too quiet. I stepped inside and the floor creaked under my weight. "Eli?" My voice echoed back at me, too loud in the silence. And then I saw him. He was sitting on the couch facing the TV, but he wasn't watching it. The screen was dark, reflecting his shape like a mirror. I stepped closer. "Eli?" His head tilted, slow and unnatural, like a puppet with loose strings. And that's when I saw his face. The eyes empty. I stumbled back, knocking over a lamp. He didn't flinch, didn't move. But when I turned to run, the TV crackled. And there I was, on the screen, smiling. I didn't stop running after that. I don't even know how I got out of there. The next thing I remember is waking up in a motel room, the sheets damp with sweat and the door locked tight. I didn't sleep. Couldn't, not after what I saw. Because it wasn't just me anymore. It was everywhere. The TVs, the mirrors, the windows. And every time I turned away, it got closer, smiling. I left the motel before sunrise. The air outside was thick and wet, clinging to my skin like oil. I kept my head down, hands stuffed deep in my pockets to hide the shaking. Every sound made me flinch. Car engines, footsteps, even the hum of streetlights. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't stop. Stopping meant mirrors. Stopping meant screens. I passed a storefront window and caught my reflection in the glass. I looked away, but not fast enough. The reflection didn't move. It just stood there, staring out at me, its head tilted slightly to the side, curious. I broke into a run. Eli's number went straight to voicemail. I called 3 times before giving up. The 4th time I left a message. "Eli, it's me. Please, call me back. My voice cracked. I need to know you're okay." I hung up and kept walking. By the time I reached the diner, my legs felt like lead. It was nearly empty, just a couple of truckers and an older woman in the corner booth. The smell of burnt coffee and grease should have been comforting, but it wasn't. It felt wrong. The waitress brought me coffee without being asked. I hadn't even looked at the menu. "You okay, hon?" she asked, setting the cup down. I opened my mouth to lie, but then I saw it. The TV above the counter, muted, playing the news. And there I was, my face. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but the headline was enough. "Missing person, Mark Reynolds. Last seen 2 days ago." The waitress followed my gaze and frowned. "That's you, isn't it?" I shoved back from the table. The chair scraped loud against the floor, and the truckers looked up. I ran. The motel room key was still in my pocket, so I went back. I don't know why. Maybe I thought I could hide there. Maybe I was just too tired to keep running. The room was exactly how I left it. Dim and stale and suffocating. But when I closed the door and turned around, the TV was on. I hadn't touched it. The remote was still on the nightstand, but the screen was alive, crackling with static. I stepped closer. My reflection shimmered in the glass, warped by the interference. "Hello," my voice came out small. The static shifted, cleared, and then there he was. Me? He stared out from the screen, eyes too dark, smile too wide. "Stop," I said, barely above a whisper. The image didn't move, didn't flicker, it just smiled. "You're not real," I said. The reflection leaned closer, like it could hear me. And then, in a voice that wasn't mine, it whispered, "Neither are you." I grabbed the remote and threw it. The screen shattered, glass exploding outward in sharp, glittering pieces. I stumbled back, gasping, but the TV didn't go dark. The image stayed. only now it was in every shard. Dozens of reflections, dozens of eyes, dozens of smiles. I don't know how long I sat there, maybe minutes, maybe hours. But eventually the static stopped. The glass stopped humming. And the reflections, they were gone. I told myself it was over. I lied. I checked out of the motel the next morning. The woman at the front desk didn't look up as she handed me the receipt. She just stared at her computer screen, tapping at the keys with fingers that looked too long. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't look at the mirrors in the lobby. I just walked out. You ever feel like you're being followed? Not by footsteps or shadows, but by something deeper? Something inside your skin, coiled tight like a wire? That's how it feels now. I see it everywhere, in windows, in phone screens, in puddles on the sidewalk. It's always there, just out of reach, smiling. And the worst part? Sometimes when I catch my reflection, I see it blink, but I don't. I don't know how this ends. I don't even know if I'm still me anymore. But if you're reading this, if you've seen something, anything, that doesn't look right, don't wait. Don't let it in, because once it's inside, it doesn't leave. You do. I left the motel before sunrise. The air outside was thick and wet, clinging to my skin like oil. I kept my head down, hands stuffed deep in my pockets to hide the shaking. Every sound made me flinch: car engines, footsteps, even the hum of streetlights. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't stop. Stopping meant mirrors. Stopping meant screens. I passed a storefront window and caught my reflection in the glass. I looked away, but not fast enough. The reflection didn't move. It just stood there, staring out at me, its head tilted slightly to the side, curious. I broke into a run. Eli's number went straight to voicemail. I called 3 times before giving up. The 4th time, I left a message. Eli, it's me. Please, call me back. My voice cracked. I need to know you're okay. I hung up and kept walking. By the time I reached the diner, my legs felt like lead. It was nearly empty, just a couple of truckers and an older woman in the corner booth. The smell of burnt coffee and grease should have been comforting, but it wasn't. It felt wrong. The waitress brought me coffee without being asked. I hadn't even looked at the menu. "You okay, hon?" she asked, setting the cup down. I opened my mouth to lie, but then I saw it. The TV above the counter, muted, playing the news. And there I was, my face. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but the headline was enough. Missing person, Mark Reynolds. Last seen 2 days ago. The waitress followed my gaze and frowned. "That's you, isn't it?" I shoved back from the table. The chair scraped loud against the floor, and the truckers looked up. I ran. The motel room key was still in my pocket, so I went back. I don't know why. Maybe I thought I could hide there. Maybe I was just too tired to keep running. The room was exactly how I left it, dim and stale and suffocating. But when I closed the door and turned around, the TV was on. I hadn't touched it. The remote was still on the nightstand, but the screen was alive, crackling with static. I stepped closer. My reflection shimmered in the glass, warped by the interference. "Hello?" My voice came out small. The static shifted, cleared, and then there he was. Me? He stared out from the screen, eyes too dark, smile too wide. "Stop," I said, barely above a whisper. The image didn't move, didn't flicker. It just smiled. "You're not real," I said. The reflection leaned closer, like it could hear me. And then, in a voice that wasn't mine, it whispered, "Neither are you." I grabbed the remote and threw it. The screen shattered, glass exploding outward in sharp, glittering pieces. I stumbled back, gasping, but the TV didn't go dark. The image stayed. Only now it was in every shard. Dozens of reflections. Dozens of eyes. Dozens of smiles. I don't know how long I sat there. Maybe minutes, maybe hours. But eventually the static stopped. The glass stopped humming. And the reflections, they were gone. I told myself it was over. I lied. I checked out of the motel the next morning. The woman at the front desk didn't look up as she handed me the receipt. She just stared at her computer screen, tapping at the keys with fingers that looked too long. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't look at the mirrors in the lobby. I just walked out. You ever feel like you're being followed? Not by footsteps or shadows, but by something deeper? Something inside your skin, coiled tight like a wire? That's how it feels now. I see it everywhere, in windows, in phone screens, in puddles on the sidewalk. It's always there, just out of reach, smiling. And the worst part? Sometimes when I catch my reflection, I see it blink. But I don't know how this ends. I don't even know if I'm still me anymore. But if you're reading this, if you've seen something, anything, that doesn't look right, don't wait. Don't let it in. Because once it's inside, it doesn't leave. You do. I haven't slept. I don't think I can anymore. Every time I close my eyes, I see it. Sometimes it's my face. Sometimes it's someone else's. Eli's. The waitresses. Even strangers on the street. But the eyes are always the same. Empty. Like something's looking out from the inside. I've stopped answering my phone. Not that it matters Eli hasn't called back. Neither has anyone else. Not even my mom. I checked the news again. I'm still missing. It's strange, seeing yourself listed like that. Like you're already gone and nobody told you. It should scare me, but it doesn't. You can't be afraid of something that already happened. I'm not sure how long I've been sitting here. The clock stopped working yesterday, and I haven't turned on my phone since the last message came through. I see you. It wasn't Eli. I told myself not to look at the mirror. I even moved it, turned it to face the wall. But mirrors don't need glass anymore. Not for it. It's in reflections, shadows, screens, even the way light hits the floor at the wrong angle. I saw it last night, stretched out under the door like smoke. And then I heard my own voice whisper, "Let me in." I left the motel after that. I didn't know where I was going, just that I couldn't stay. But the world outside didn't feel real anymore. I passed people on the street, but they didn't look at me. Or maybe they did. Their eyes lingered just a little too long. Their smiles felt stretched too tight. And I kept wondering, are they like me? Or are they like it? I found a payphone near the bus station and called Eli one last time. He picked up. "Hello?" It was his voice, but it wasn't him. I knew it before he even spoke again. "Where are you, Mark?" I didn't answer. "Come back," he said. "We're waiting." I hung up, but the dial tone didn't come back. Instead, I heard breathing, slow, measured, right against my ear. And then, softly, "I see you." I ran. I don't even remember where I was going. I just ran until my legs burned and my lungs gave out. But no matter how far I went, the feeling never left. That weight pressing down on me, watching me. I made it as far as the woods outside town before my body gave up. I fell to my knees, gasping for air, and looked down. There were footprints, not mine, and not leading away, leading toward me. I don't know how long I sat there, staring at the ground. Long enough for the shadows to stretch and the sky to go dark. Long enough for the footsteps to start again, soft, slow, coming closer. I didn't turn around, I couldn't, but I knew it was there, because the footsteps stopped. And then I felt it, breath right against my neck. I woke up back in my apartment. At least I think it was my apartment. Everything looked the same, but it didn't feel the same. The light was too dim, the walls seemed closer, and the scratches on the lock, gone. But when I checked the mirror, I saw the truth. It wasn't gone, I don't know who's reading this. I don't even know if it matters. But if you've ever felt it, ever caught something in the corner of your eye, or saw your reflection linger just a second too long, don't look, because once it sees you, it never stops watching. And one day, it won't be a reflection anymore. It'll be you. I don't remember falling asleep. One moment I was in the woods, staring at those footprints. It's footprints. The next I was back here, back in this apartment that looks like mine, but isn't. I've been trying to convince myself that I'm awake, that this is real. But every time I move, the walls seem to breathe, like they're waiting. I haven't checked the mirror again. I won't, because deep down I already know what I'll see. I tried leaving earlier, just grabbed my shoes and bolted for the door. But when I opened it, it was still me. Standing there on the other side, it didn't move, didn't lunge, just stood there, staring and smiling. I slammed the door shut and locked it. But the worst part, it didn't knock this time. I've been hearing things, not voices, scratches, soft and slow like nails dragging against wood. I thought it was coming from the mirror, but now I'm not so sure. It's everywhere. The walls, the floor, even inside the vents. I tried covering them, towels, blankets, anything to block out the sound. But it doesn't stop. It's inside now. I can feel it. I found something carved into the back of the closet door. I don't know how I didn't notice it before. Maybe it wasn't there before. Just 3 words. Let me in. It's not my handwriting, but it looks like it could be. I'm losing time. I don't know when it started, but it's getting worse. I'll blink, and suddenly hours will be gone. The lights will be off. The curtains will be open. The scratches will be deeper. I woke up this morning with mud on my hands, and when I looked down, I saw footprints leading out this time. I think it's in my head now. I keep hearing it whisper, even when there's no sound. It doesn't even use words most of the time, just echoes, breathing. But sometimes it does speak. And when it does, it always says the same thing. You let me in. I smashed every mirror in the apartment, every screen. But it doesn't matter. I can still feel it watching. I can feel me watching, because that's the part I can't explain. The longer this goes on, the harder it is to tell the difference. The harder it is to remember which thoughts are mine and which are his, or if there's even a difference at all. I think this is what it wanted, not to replace me, to become me. And maybe it already has. Maybe I'm not Mark anymore. Maybe I never was. I don't know how this ends. But if you're reading this, if you've seen the signs, don't look. That's how it starts. One glance. One reflection that lingers too long. One shadow that doesn't move when you do. And once it sees you, you'll never see yourself the same way again. The scratching just stopped. For the first time in days, or has it been weeks, there's silence. But that's worse, isn't it? Because now I'm afraid to turn around. Afraid that if I do, I won't see the walls, I'll see glass. And on the other side, me, smiling,